with that, just make sure that your video is then turned off, and that should be fine. Then in terms of courtesy, we would just ask that everybody that is on the call just mute themselves. There will be lots of opportunity to interact, and so at those points, we'd welcome you to open up your mic and then you can talk, or if you prefer to use the chat, you can do that too. And then we have the rule of 2 feet. So at any point, if an urgent matter comes around, you're more than welcome to jump off of that and then go and deal with those things. We know that most of you are going to be attending from home or from remote locations all over. So those are the house rules. Just move on. Just want to say a huge thanks to our sponsors. So we have 2 big sponsors, and that's Peach Payments, who's been our first sponsor, our initial sponsor. Without them, it's going to be very hard for us to do the event. And so big props to them. Peach Payments is a payments gateway. So you're more than welcome to go to peachpayments.com and read up more about them. And then our other sponsor, OfferZen, they're the ones that give us some cool swag in most of these events. You may see a link in the chat at some points throughout the meetup. You're more than welcome to click on that link, enter in your details, and then you can stand a chance to win some cool swag through OfferZen. In terms of additional ways that you can follow up about things that are happening up in the tech leadership space, we build up a newsletter that goes out monthly. You're more than welcome to grab this. I know that Get Review right now is actually down, so I'm not going to be able to show you what that looks like, but you're also more than welcome to go to our tech leadership website. This has a stack of information. It also has all of our recorded past talks that you can go and watch. It also has a good section on recommended books that we'd highly recommend that you go and read through. So a lot of these we've read ourselves, and we've had the speakers also recommend books to us. Then in terms of Twitter, you're more than welcome to follow this. We do tweet quite frequently. There's lots of interesting articles that we curate during the week that we make known to everybody. And so there's a lot of like really good curated content. It's not just something that we find and quickly retweet. It's stuff that we've actually gone through and made sure is good. So a very, very cool thread if you want to follow that. We've spoken about the swag, so you might see that link come up. And then I just want to talk through our speakers today. So today we have both Alison Faraday and David Kossew. They're going to be talking to us about how to make one-on-ones better for managers. And I think this is such an important topic. I remember my first 6 months of being an initial manager, this was the biggest and hardest thing for me, is like, what is the content that we talk about? So I'm very stoked to be able to introduce both of our speakers, and I'm sure that we will all take quite a lot from it. As we mentioned, this is going to be quite a interactive session, so be prepared to be thrown into the limelight, and we may do some, acting and see how we can make these one-on-ones better. All right, so over to our speakers today, Alison and David. Welcome to the Tech Leadership Meetup.
Great, thank you so much, and welcome to everybody tonight. We're very excited to be here. And as we were saying right at the beginning, if you've got any questions about what is a better one-on-one, what does a one-on-one, what should it look like for you? If you have any questions about the right or the wrong way of doing it, please pop that in the chat, and we're going to make sure that we land on those points tonight. David, I'll just kick off and introduce myself. My name is Alison Faraday. As Roberto said, I have been in many areas of corporate for a long time, and about 5 years ago retrained as a coach, and then quickly found out that actually working with teams was where I wanted to be, because that's where it gets really, really interesting. So David and I have decided to join forces and call ourselves Team DNA, and you must admit that's a very cool name. And we work with organizations to help improve basically team dynamics and to allow the relationship systems intelligence to emerge within a team. Over to you, David.
Thanks, Alison. Yes, so on the slides there, you're looking at my coaching sort of persona. I'm actually a techie like all of you. I've been in IT for about 25 years, and I'm probably in what you'd call that lead plus coach space. So I do lead teams. I still code every now and then. I conduct lots of interviews. I do one-on-ones. I coach people. I mentor people. And I'm really honored to be here for the first time speaking at Tech Leadership with Alison and with all of you. And we hope that you get some value out of what we're going to talk about this evening.
Great. So let's have a look at what we are going to be talking about tonight. So we'll be discussing what is a one-on-one and what is it not. We'll be looking at why one-on-ones are a good idea, because there's quite a few benefits wrapped up in those. And then we'll be looking at specific tools to deepen your conversational skills. So although we're looking at very much in your environment, in a tech environment, or in any team environment, really these are skills that are very useful in any conversation that you have. Any conversation could be a conversation that counts. So we'll be sharing with you 4 tools, which is the love listening sequence. We do love ourselves a good acronym. We'll be looking at listening levels, powerful questions, and then Benny, you asked a great question about a structure for a one-on-one. We'll be looking at the GROW model, which is a great way to make sure that you land on all the points of a constructive one-on-one.
Right, so I'm sure it will be useful to start with the basics here. So what is a one-on-one? So a one-on-one is, and this starts talking about the structure already, Benny. A one-on-one is it's a scheduled weekly or twice monthly meeting with your team member. You might have this with all of your team members. It's usually about 30 to 45 minutes. You don't want it to go too long, but you want it to be long enough that there's some value in it for both of you. It's got agreed ground rules and scope, and this will explain in a little bit more detail later why that's important. It's partnering with your team member to help them to achieve their full professional potential, whatever that might be for them. And we're going to discuss the benefits of one-on-ones and add a bit more information there for you. It's a structured, private, and very importantly, confidential conversation with action items as an outcome. It's got to be safe for the person that you're having the one-on-one with. So that also talks a bit about the agreed ground rules and scope. Like, for example, they're not going to get fired because of something they say to you in a one-on-one in that space. Not necessarily. Maybe there is something they can still get themselves fired for, but you set the ground rules up so that it's not on the table. And then it includes follow-up and accountability. So when your team member walks away from that one-on-one with you, they've got a list of actions they need to complete in order to help them to achieve their full potential, whatever that might be. And it's very important in tech, especially because, as some of you might know, it's important for people with technical skills and technical knowledge to get promoted into those leadership positions. But often, if that person didn't already have the people skills, they're going to need to develop them and figure them out quite quickly. And so we're hoping that this will help you, at least in this one area, of how to run the one-on-ones. And you'll see pretty soon what these benefits are. But before we go there, just so that you don't fall into some of these pitfalls. Alison's going to explain to you what a one-on-one isn't.
Yeah, so it's easy to get confused about what a one-on-one is, but what it is not, it's not a conversation over a beer. It's not a conversation in a corridor. So it can't have just a purely relationship focus around, well, how was your weekend? Did you catch the rugby? That kind of thing. That's not really the kind of conversation that's going to lead to the benefits that you want to have from it. It's also not purely a status update on work tasks. So it's not purely sitting opposite somebody and saying, okay, how's it going on that project? Have you met all of your targets? Going through a checklist. It's not purely that. And it's not only a work planning session. So it's not, okay, well, how does August look for you? And let's plan into the final quarter of the year. What's also interesting about a one-on-one, unless you've established some kind of ground rules, you can't launch into, well, let me tell you something about you. Yeah, I've been meaning to get this off my shoulders, but actually you're not cutting it. That is not going to work, and somebody's going to really feel, your team member is going to feel very, very ambushed because they came in with one expectation in mind and now they've got something else happening to them. And it's not the same as a performance review, an annual performance review. That's a separate planned meeting. So one-on-one really is around building that connection within your team and with an individual focus for each team member. So let's have a look at the benefits then of a good one-on-one.
Great. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about each point here. So a one-on-one can be an ideal space to set up for feedback to be given to your team member by you. And also as a way, potentially, if that's how you've set it up, for you to receive feedback about your leadership from the person, from your team member. In terms of skills development, it's fantastic. Often as tech people, we go on these training courses and we come back and then we don't use that knowledge immediately and it sort of fades. With one-on-ones, it's an opportunity to create ways to use those skills and develop them as well, and also to identify what skills would be best to develop for you to really maximize your potential in your role. Career growth, it's something that it falls under one of those important but not urgent tasks, like if you follow the 7 habits of highly effective people, and if we don't give attention to it, then it's not going to happen. And we know that, well, there are a few different paths, like, just speaking from myself as a software developer, we can either go into management, into architecture, or into the tech lead space. And it's useful to have a soundboard to be able to make that decision in an informed way, and to take the right actions in order to get there. We say temperature check. It's a way to see what's going on in the relationship. Often our conversations are around content, this happened, that happened, or it's around a pattern, like I've noticed that these things have happened more than once. But it's really powerful also to have a conversation about the relationship itself and what's going on in that space between you and me. And that also separates kind of the first level of leadership that you get, which is you have to follow me because I'm the boss, right? The next level up from that is people want to follow me because we have a relationship. And part of these it's one of the benefits of these one-on-ones. And having a space to do that temperature check all leads to more solid relationships between the team leader and all the team members. Leadership development, there's a lot of facets to that. The first being developing, if you're a tech lead, it's developing those individual contributors on your teams to also become tech leads. It's putting effort and energy into making more of you, basically, within the system. Alignment, that can be aligning around kind of a project vision or the company's vision or values, or even just between the two of you, just aligning on something. Often what happens is a change will happen and I go with the change, but you don't. And we sort of have a conflict between us, which often we don't address. And it can be a benefit of a one-on-one to align around those things. And then I think relationship building, I've mentioned already. So are we going to do our demo now, Alison?
Yeah, so I think before we jump into that, David, maybe for the people who are attending, sitting in the room, can you think about what kind of relationship you would like to have within your team members? If you're not a team lead, then perhaps with your leader. What your team lead? What kind of relationship would you like to have? Perhaps pop that in the chat while we do our little demo. And then we're going to ask everybody to, well, I see people have turned their videos off. And then we're going to select speaker view so that you can just see me and David on this one. How do we do that?
So there's three little dots if you hover over one of the participants' videos, and you can say hide non-video participants. And then if everyone apart from Alison and myself switch their videos off, then the rest of you will only see Alison and myself.
Okay.
Yeah, we've got supportive from Annalinda and trust-based relationship. We've got open, honest, relaxed fun from Chris. And from Tafadzwa, we've got collaboration is key.
All of those excellent points.
Trust is so important here.
Yeah. And
some humor. Okay, good dollops of humor coming right up.
Now you're talking our language. Cool. Should we kick off, David?
Yes. So, Alison, how's it going?
I think it's going fine. I'm feeling good. I've finished all my user stories for my sprint. Yeah, so I think it's going pretty well.
I beg to differ. I've heard some feedback from some of your teammates that says otherwise. They told me I'm not saying who they are, but I'm just saying what I heard, that you checked in some code that broke the build. What? And some of your unit tests didn't pass. And that's costing the team some time here.
I'm really confused here because as far as I'm aware, I have checked all the deliverables. I've got them in on time. I was really happy with my user stories. So and also I really think it's not fair unless you tell me who these team members are.
Why are you being so defensive?
You know, you asked me to come in here. We were having a conversation. You asked me how I'm doing. I told you how I feel I'm doing. And now you tell me that that people have been talking about me behind my back. I am so confused.
Okay. Maybe this will help, because I remember being in a similar situation to you. And what I did was I just stayed longer hours working on this. And I was just a lot more meticulous with my test-driven development to get all those tests to pass.
Are you saying that I'm not meticulous?
You know what? I don't have time for these emotional outbursts. I'm just going to reassign some of your tasks to your other team members.
Okay, if I could, I would slam the door now, but now I can't.
Ah.
I want to do the same gesture.
Who's cringing right now?
So maybe you can pop in the chat everything that we did wrong. Well, when I say we, I obviously mean David. A couple of hints of sarcasm. What else did you see that David, I mean, when we think about building a relationship, if we think about creating a meaningful conversation, I am not feeling very motivated right now, I've got to say.
Alison was defensive in Bulelo. Thank you. Someone's taking my side. And also a little bit of victim blaming there.
Yeah, exactly.
Blindsided, yes, no build up.
Yeah, I mean, it brings into question all kinds of things. I mean, if David is talking about me to other team members, that's seriously problematic right there, because he's obviously talking about other people behind their back as well. So you've got a lot of trust that's being broken there. So David kept saying what he would do, etc., but not really sharing the information. So let's not asking for my point of view. Exactly.
Yeah, exactly, Roberta. No digging to discover the truth.
All surface level. Yeah. All excellent points.
I wasn't really listening.
Yeah, you weren't really listening. I'm surprised you actually remained looking at the screen, David. I thought you might actually do a few work emails while we were at it.
That's what I was doing right at the beginning when I was checking my phone.
Okay. All right. So let's have a look then at what not to do. And I think you've highlighted them. So what not to do. David did you do this, David? I can't remember. Did you ask why?
I did ask why you were defensive.
Oh, why I was defensive. So, wow, that is a seriously hectic question. So why is one of those questions that you've got to use with a nice big dollop of caution. If somebody tells you something and then you say, well, why did you do that? That can feel very much like an attack. So you've got to be very careful about that. Yes, Benny using his own experiences to solve a problem, that was not a problem. Giving advice, that is what David did. He said, look, why don't you do this? Instead of allowing me to work out what was going on and work out a solution for myself, he told me his story. So he shared, which is the next point, what he did in that scenario, which was, in my mind, completely inapplicable. And by doing that, he minimized what I was going through. And he has no idea what I was going through, actually. So he judged me. He said I was having an emotional outbreak, which I think is, we're getting very close to mansplaining there, I think. And then the rescuing idea where he said, look, I will, outsource some of your work. So by rescuing me, he was effectively saying, you're not capable and you are a victim. So those are all the things that we don't, absolutely, that's going to shut down any kind of relationship, any kind of meaningful conversation. And I will walk away from that conversation thinking a fair amount of swear words, just to be clear, and they're not good ones. So this is what we would rather be doing in that kind of conversation. The love stands for listening attentively. And David's going to be going through what deep listening, I was going to say what deep love looks like. We're not going there. It's not that kind of webinar.
Not tonight, no.
Not tonight. Deep listening. Part of listening is observing, looking at, listening to the tone of the conversation and watching body language. We all know about crossed arms. We all know about the shutdownness. We all know about eye contact. V is for verifying, to check your hearing. And that is really around clarification. So ask you a question like, can I just check that I've heard you correctly? what you said was blah, blah, blah. Am I getting that in the right way? And that's very important because it would allow me in that conversation to feel heard, which leads to the E, which is to empathize. I would feel very much more empathized with if David had paused to check what was really going on in that conversation. Great. So I think we're going to look at our listening levels now.
Right. So I'm going to take you through the different levels of listening from worst to best. So the first level, I'm not really listening to you at all. Like, this is when I go to a meeting and like half the people have their laptops open and they're actually checking emails while the meeting's going on. In a one-on-one, it would be the equivalent of like checking your phone while the other person's talking to you. So like it's the easiest level to address if this is where you find yourself. And the way that you do that is to set an intention to give your time to the person that you're meeting with in your one-on-one, which means putting your phone away or switching it off or putting it on silent, closing the laptop. If you're doing the one-on-one online, like on Zoom or Teams or whatever, or Hangouts, then it means just maximizing that and not looking at other things at the same time. You know, I think we're all busy. We all do that. In a one-on-one, we're suggesting not to. Just focus on, give that person your attention. So then the next level, once you are giving somebody your attention, this is a trap we all fall into, is if Alison's having a conversation with me and she says something that I go, like I want to respond to that thing, then what I do is I kind of stop listening at that point because I don't want to forget what I want to say. And she's carrying on talking. So I've got to stop listening to her and wait until my opportunity to say what I want to say. So what to do there is, when that happens, is to just tell yourself, okay, like here is something that I would like to respond to if the opportunity comes up, and just park it and carry on listening. And maybe it won't even be necessary to say what you wanted to say later because the context of the conversation might have changed, but at least then you will be listening to the rest of what your team member is telling you. So I think most of us fall somewhere in this third level, which is the biased listening. So I'm not going to go into all the psychology of this, but basically when I'm listening to you, I'm listening to you through all my own lenses of how I interpret the world and what I believe. So what you're telling me, I'm fitting into my own sort of understanding, and that might be wrong, right? I could have bias, all sorts of biases at play there. And so, yes, I am listening to you, but I'm not really hearing you. And this is where things get harder as the team lead or the tech lead to address it. In order to address this, it really means doing some deep contemplation, some introspection, and kind of basically just doing work on yourself, you know, to live your own life more fully, and looking at some of those aspects of yourself that you maybe have like hidden away somewhere, and what's up with that. Then the next level is empathetic listening. This is, I think we all have that ability to empathize to some degree, and possibly in the workplace situation with colleagues, it might feel a bit like, I don't know if we need to be talking about feelings here. And so you decide what's appropriate and what isn't in your one-on-ones. If you're comfortable talking feelings, do it. And obviously, if your team member is, then go for it. But if there's resistance to it, you don't really need to go there to have an effective one-on-one, although it can help. And then the last level, the reason that it's kind of a higher level than the one before is because we're not just bleeding hearts. You know, there's got to be some purpose to our being empathetic with somebody else. And here it's also about being empathetic, but also having that ability to detach and to observe things like body language, where, for example, maybe Tanaka's telling me about something really horrible that happened to him in the last week, but there's a smile on his face. And I notice that, like, I'm feeling what he's feeling, but the smile doesn't match. So now I'm going to ask him about that. So here we're kind of entering into like the level of like super coaches and maybe some therapists who are able to do that. We're just showing you what it can look like at the highest level. Your one-on-ones, you'll do fine in those in the third level and a little bit of the fourth.
Yeah, the great explanation. So let's have a look at questioning skills. And there's a reason that we put listening first, because oftentimes people will ask a question, but really they're not listening to the answer. So you almost have to set yourself up in a listening mindset before you ask a question. Because when you're in a listening mindset, it helps you to form a good, solid question as well. Open-ended versus closed-ended questions. So we all know that stuff. Asking a question that starts with a what, a how, a who, a where, a when. Those are open-ended questions, but also be very clear about where you're going with that question. You know, what is your intention, which we talk about in a minute. What is the point of that question? Is it to really find out information? Are you going with a curious mindset, or are you going with a mindset of, oh, I'm going to nail this one now. I'm just going to really get my point across through a question. Again, we spoke about avoiding why, because that can seem quite invasive and also a bit aggressive. This is a good one, asking one question at a time. Sometimes people, I'm sure we've seen those old comedy things where I'm thinking Monty Python, I think, where they say, and where can I catch the train? And does the train leave on time? And will there be space on the train? Ask one question at a time and then wait for the answer. So if the question takes a bit of time to generate an answer, that's generally a good thing, because it means people are thinking. So if there's a pause, that's a good thing. Allow that silence to do its work. So respect the power of appropriate silences. You're going to know when the silence is starting to feel awkward and uncomfortable and something else is happening in the space between the two of you. Some other dynamic is coming out. Again, be clear about your intentions, which I spoke about. And reflective listening is a great basis for a question. So reflective listening shows that you heard what they said, and now you're translating it into questions. So for example, going back to the role play between David and I, a question might have come up from David of, so you're saying that you have landed on all of your deliverables and you're feeling good about what you've achieved. Now that could be a question. And then I would be able to say, yeah, actually, I'm feeling really good about that. But then perhaps it gives me pause for thought, and I'll go into except for, and then I can start talking about what I'm a little bit anxious about, the bits that I didn't deliver. So start with a listening mindset and be careful of the kind of questions that you ask. So David, if you can just click forward, there's some examples there of questions. So tell me how things are going in the role for you. What are your hopes for your future here? Are there any obstacles to your performance? If we were to swap roles for a day, what a cool question is that? So if you were me and I were you, what would you do? You know, like being president for the day. And the reflective question is, so what you are saying is ... Great. So let's look at how to hang that all together.
Right. So we told you right at the beginning, we were going to show you what GROW was. So GROW was developed by John Whitmore, published in 1992 in a book that he wrote called Coaching for Performance. And it's the simplest coaching model possibly that there is. It's also incredibly nuanced. But because of its simplicity, this is why when we study coaching, we learn this one first. And it's a way to structure the conversation into 4 different, let's call them sections. One of them is focusing on the goals. So the G is focusing on the goals. The R is reality. The O is options, and the W is the way forward. So what we mean by this in the context of one-on-ones, what is your goal as a team member for these one-on-ones? Do you want a promotion? Do you want to get more skilled in a particular area, etc., etc.? There's got to be a goal there. And then
David, can I just jump in here and just say to everybody, if you want to just give some thought to the GROW model for your own example in your team. So maybe as David's going through GROW, you can give some thought to, what kind of thing would you look at for the G, for a conversation that you might need to have? What might be a goal for a conversation that you might have with your lead or with some of your team members? And then so in other words, translate it into your workplace examples, and it'll make it more applicable for you. Sorry to interrupt.
Cool.
David.
Thanks for that, Alison. The R is the reality. So if I want to get the promotion, like, what is my reality now? Like, why haven't I gotten that promotion yet? What are some of those things maybe that I need to address or look at in order to be able to achieve that? Now, something that I think we all do, and it gets us stuck, is that we tell ourselves that it's too risky to go for that thing we want. We try to talk ourselves out of it. So the fact that we want it is just like it's just an idea at that stage. And why a one-on-one is so important is when we get somebody to speak about what their goal is and about their reality, they start thinking about things they hadn't thought of before, like new areas of thinking that maybe challenge their assumptions around why they haven't gone for that thing yet. So talking very generically now, but if it was a promotion thing, then maybe the team member wants a promotion, and part of them is actually afraid that if they got the promotion, well, they'd have to firstly work extremely hard to get the promotion. And the assumption is once they get the promotion, then they're going to have to keep up that level of intensity forever with their work. So there's kind of like an underlying current telling them not to go for the thing that they want, right? So unpacking that in the conversation, in this reality section of the conversation, is very, very useful. And we've given a couple of example questions now. Where do we stand now? What have you been able to achieve? So here it's like, what have you tried so far, to realize that goal? So once you've gone into that and with your team member in a one-on-one and feel like you've unpacked enough, you can move on to options, which is now it's kind of the so what. It's like the what was, what's the goal, what's the reality? The so what is, okay, like, so what do you want to do about it? And there we start looking at possibilities. We can look at ideas, at brainstorming. There's nothing that's off the table at this point. Like, you can even ask the person to come up with like a ridiculous option, or we sometimes call it a BHAG, a big, hairy, audacious goal, something outrageous just to throw in the mix. And sometimes that thing is it's one of the valid options that they get to choose from later. So what is possible? What options or opportunities do we have now in terms of getting you closer to your goal? And it's about looking at coming up with those options, looking at them, seeing what the commonalities are, and then coming up with a strategy. And the way forward, the W, is basically, it's the now what. So we've done the what, we've done the so what, now what. What are you willing to commit to? And this is where we get those actions that are so crucial to the one-on-ones. What obstacles do you anticipate? So start looking at things that could trip the person up. Like if they want the promotion and they're going to have to lead 2 big projects at the same time, then what could go wrong having to lead 2 big projects at the same time? Start thinking about those things. And how will you stay accountable? So it's great to do this in a one-on-one, because your team member can write down these actions. You can track their actions as well. And then you can ask them next time, in a couple of weeks or a month's time, how did it go with leading your 2 projects at the same time? What are your goals now? What's changed? And you can use the same structure for the conversation in each one-on-one. And is there anything you want to add, Alison?
Yeah, I just want to touch on what Roberto has asked. He said, as we deal with folks that are driven by different things, they're going to be individuals who are very much task or goal orientated, who are out there to climb the ladder as fast as possible. There are also others who are far more people orientated and are focused on creating a nurturing environment and safe space for feedback, focus on the team's success, and are happy with the role and responsibilities they have. Each person is going to want different things from a one-to-one. Would having different styles for your one-to-ones be advisable, or would you follow a template for consistency's sake? An excellent question. Can I jump in there, David?
Go for it.
So when we talk about goals, we're not necessarily talking about career goals or performance-related goals. The goals, the G part, can be merely just related to this conversation. And we're going to do a little role play now, which highlights that. So when we get together, it could be as simple as a question of, is there anything specific you want to get out of this conversation? Or where are we heading with this conversation? What would make this conversation worthwhile? So it's a different conversation to a performance-related conversation. Roberta, I don't know if that answers that.
Let me add that this is why I was looking puzzled. I was trying to remember this important point, that the structure of the conversation doesn't necessarily have to be linear, like in a straight line where you go G, then discuss R, then discuss O, then W. You can jump between them, because often somebody will tell you something that they're already willing to commit to right off the bat. And then you're already in the W at that point. So it's being aware of what those 4 conversations are in your one-on-one, and knowing how to transition between them. That's the important part. So there is flexibility in this model.
Yeah, so we're going to do a little role play now, and as we go through it, we're going to try and undo the damage that team leader David did to my ability to work with him in future. And as we go through, just in your own mind, see if you can identify when David lands on the G, when he lands on the O, or the R, the O, and the W, and we'll recap it afterwards. And you'll see it's a very flexible thing to hang, framework to hang a conversation on. Great.
Cool, Alison. How's it going?
Yeah, it's going really well, actually. I think I've met all my deadlines. My user stories for the sprint were handed in on time. I'm actually feeling pretty good.
Great. Alison, there is one thing that I do want to raise with you that might feel a bit uncomfortable. Is that okay?
Oh, okay, a bit scary, but go ahead.
Okay. So if I look at your sprint history, I was looking at the reports, and I just happened to notice that your velocity has taken a bit of a dive the last couple of weeks. It was excellent, and now it's a lot less than it was. And I just wanted to know, like, I'm wondering if something is going on for you. Are you okay to talk about that?
Gosh, I'm a little bit shocked by that, because I really feel like I'm giving my absolute best here.
I totally understand that. Alison, these one-on-ones are designed to help you maximize your potential and to bring you up to the level of tech lead where you want to be. My job is to provide you with as much support as you possibly need to do that. That's why I'm asking. I'm coming from a place of care.
Okay, that does help a little bit. I'm just scared I was a part of some kind of horrible, blaming session here. And I just want to check with you, David, is this confidential? Because it's a little bit awkward.
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. It's confidential. Like what we discuss here stays here.
And it's not part of my performance review?
No, not at all.
Okay. Well, actually, I mean, I really feel like I'm just not getting on with the Scrum Master at the moment. She's really treating me like an outsider, and I've been with the team for 2 months already. So in truth, I am actually feeling quite demotivated at the moment.
Okay. Yeah, I get you.
I don't know if I've done something wrong or what's going on.
What do you want to change here?
In what do you mean? How would I want to change?
Like, do you want to change this in any way?
Yeah, I want to get on better with her. I really do. I mean, she was quite nice to me in the beginning, I think, and now not.
What have you maybe tried so far to get on better with her?
I haven't really tried anything. I've actually, I suppose what I've been doing is actually just avoiding her, because I'm a bit scared, of making. I don't want there to be conflict. I don't want to be the reason there's conflict in the team.
Sure. So avoid her.
Yeah.
If you think about other things you could maybe try that you haven't done, like what ideas might you have?
Well, I suppose I could. I mean, do you think I could actually have a cup of coffee with her and just like have a conversation? Or do you think that would make it worse?
What do you think?
Well, I mean, I think if you say it's okay, and maybe that's what I could do. And doesn't need to be something that's scary. Maybe I could just check in with her and just say, is she okay with my performance? How am I doing? Maybe there's something there that I've missed.
If you imagine asking her that, how do you think that would turn out?
I think it would be okay, actually. I think it probably would be okay.
So, Alison, is that maybe something you're willing to commit to, is having a coffee, asking these questions, having a conversation about this?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I could do that. I mean, it's a cup of coffee. How hard can it be, right?
Awesome. So thank you. Thank you for trusting me enough to bring this up.
Okay, great. I'll let you know when we have our next one-on-one. I'll let you know how it went. Wish me luck.
Good luck.
Thank you. Okay, so I don't know if everybody noticed when David landed on the GROW. Did anybody notice when he landed on those points?
And you can switch your videos on if you want and talk to us.
Do you want to go back to the grow model, David, and then we'll just try and identify when in the conversation we got to each of those points. Well, for me, when David obviously had his own goals about the conversation, and that would have been to find out what's going on, to have a conversation about what's going on. And then when David asked me, what do I want to change about the relationship with the Scrum Master? That is the goal for the conversation. That's the G for me, because it means I now am in an active thinking mode around what do I want to change? What is my goal for this conversation regarding the relationship with the Scrum Master? That would be the G. The R is going to be, David asked, what have you tried so far? Yes, Mbalelo, that's exactly right. The W was asked, am I willing to have a coffee? And he also brought in the piece around accountability, like by the time we meet next, let's have that conversation. And then, so David asked, what have I tried so far? And I was like, nothing. And I think that's often the case with people, is that talking about it allows them to build up courage. But oftentimes people have done nothing so far because it's a pretty scary thing to tackle. And then I came up with the idea of having a coffee. And I said to David, is that okay? Should I do that? And he bounced it right back to me and said, well, what do you think? So it was totally my action. I decided, and I can commit to that action because it's mine. So what should happen in the next one-on-one is some feedback on how it went. And then by then, David should have some more stats showing how my velocity is going.
And just to add, we'd come up with a bit of a script for you guys before this evening, and we totally went off script from the beginning.
Yeah.
So this was more like a real conversation.
Yeah. So Roberta, I don't know if that answers your question around the G part of the grow model. So really, nobody in the conversation needs to say, okay, have we landed on G? What are our goals for the conversation? But in your mind, as the lead, you are saying to yourself, what would we like to emerge from this conversation with? And that then gives you a beacon. It directs how you are moving in that conversation. Instead of milling about and accusations of lying, and we're back to the first version of that terrible, demoralizing, which I'm still going to recover from, scenario.
And can I add something, Alison? The key there is to remember what they say when they answer that question. Right?
Yes.
Remember what that goal was, so you can check with them at the end of the conversation. How did we do? Did we accomplish what you wanted for this conversation?
Right. And that actually leads us back to that actually leads us back to the original points in the chat, which let's just have a look and see if we landed on all of those points. Just kind of see how structured should one-on-ones be. Benny, did that answer your question? I think we did give you a structure.
Yes, you did.
Great. And do you think it's something that could be useful?
I think in most cases, like in my sort of experience, having structure is a good template. But like, I think following a structure for the sake of following a structure is obviously not good. So I think in any conversation, it's always good to have space and room for the conversations to diverge. And generally, when I approach any sort of conversation in the past, like it's good to go in, see how the conversation is going, and see if that structure is applicable to it, and maybe deviate and go a different route needed to. So I definitely think it helps because it sets at least a template. But I also personally think it's good to be flexible for change in the actual conversation itself.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's very true. And I think once you've practiced enough with some of the basic stuff, I like what Pat Kua said in one of his recent newsletters about glue work. He had an article about that. This is glue work. It's not necessarily techie stuff. And to learn how to do this, it does take quite a bit of practice. So I would recommend start from the basics, something like grow, and practice that, and then maybe learn another model or conversation structure. And then you can start to use your intuition and figure out, like Benny was saying, what the correct conversation is for this person, for this context, for this moment right now.
Yeah, one of the things that we'll be dealing with coming up in our next webinar will be how to have difficult conversations where everybody comes in, from their corner, and you can even hear the sound of the bell going for the first round. And we're going to be dealing with an excellent structure for how to deal with that as well, because that is a different conversation, and a different model would probably work quite well there. So I think that just leaves us to thank everybody. Are there any questions before we end off for this evening? Any questions that we haven't covered?
Perhaps not a question, but more of like something that I've just noted, is that there is a fair amount of tact that's required by the manager to really have an effective one-to-one. I mean, you can always follow these models blindly, but you're probably not going to have as good of a thing. So I think really, it's practice to try over and over, and you eventually get to the point where you can have these questions and know exactly how to scratch an itch to get the stuff out, which is something that I've taken away. So thank you.
Yeah, pleasure.
I see Anna Linda has a question too. I think, is it also perhaps important to clarify upfront that you won't be giving solutions, only coaching and supporting the person to find their own solutions?
Nice.
Yes.
I'm going to hand that over to David to answer. I'm afraid I have to step away, but thank you everybody for attending. It's been wonderful, and have a great evening.
Thank you,
Cheers,
Alison.
Alison.
Thank you for
Bye.
Thanks, Alison.
Yeah, so I think that comes down to what you agree on with the person as to what kind of one-on-ones you're going to have. Like, it could be more coaching oriented. It could also be mentorship oriented. And if it's mentorship oriented, then there is an expectation to also impart knowledge and give advice. With a coaching style, we're not supposed to do that.
And the last one was from Toboko. What do you do if the one-on-ones are not consistent or don't exist?
Okay, so there aren't one-on-ones yet, and you want to start doing them. I think it's already starting to have conversations with your team members and tell them that you are going to start doing one-on-ones. You're going to book a morning out or an afternoon, and you're going to see everybody for half an hour, and we'll figure the rest out as we go along. We'll figure out, for you specifically, like what you want to get from the one-on-ones, whether it's career growth, whether it's leadership, whatever it is that you want to use the one-on-ones for, and we'll figure out how to make that happen together. Like, it's not like I'm going to tell you we're doing one-on-ones and I'm going to direct it. You're going to direct it. And I think it's also useful just to remind people about the 7 habits again. Like, there's too much time goes by where we do the urgent things, whether they're important or not. This creates at least a half an hour space every 2 weeks to look at the things that are important but not necessarily urgent. And those are the things that help you to grow. Does
And
that
just from the
Go for it,
does
Benny.
that I was just also wondering what happens if it's the other way, where let's say you're a team member and your leads don't conduct one-on-one. So is there a way that you can think to encourage that?
So I'm looking at Chris's question. Do these kind of almost formal one-on-ones almost separate the leader team member rather than the usual daily interactions that build relationships? So it does create a separation, because the normal or the usual daily interactions they're very much work focused, project focused, and it is possible to have many one-on-ones, I guess, like at any point where it seems beneficial, but to have that structure of a formal one-on-one creates the intent, and that intent often isn't first and foremost throughout everybody's day all the time. I hope that answers your question to some degree, Chris. And then Annalinda, where does the ownership lie? As a team member, I drive these with my manager. I haven't experienced that this is very common. Yeah, I'm totally with you on that. If I'm lucky, I get 2 meetings with my manager a year, and it's ticking boxes for a performance review. So I think what you're suggesting there is managing up, which I fully support. That's how to make the most of your time there, and to help you achieve your goals and your success there. You got to do that if your manager isn't doing it. If you are the manager, then I think it is on you. I do believe it's your responsibility to start these.
Awesome. I think that also answers my question, which is great. Like, if you don't have them on, the team member side, like it is good to try and, so thank you.
All right. Thanks, David. Thanks for everyone for joining. I think that might be everything. What we'll do is stop recording, but I just wanted to give one